As the channel has grown, I've struggled with video topics given my niche is entirely top tier. There's still planes I haven't made a video on in the past, but the thing is I don't like playing stuff just for the sake of a video. Nor am I overly fond of the classic plane review format as it locks you into playing it a lot, and I do want to play it enough to be able to offer actually valuable insights as best I can. And that brings us to this video. Most of my time is just spent playing the game with whatever I feel like flying at a given moment, without thinking about a video theme. Instead I figured I'll just start a series of general commentary videos and just pull together what I think are the most interesting clips from my recent gameplay. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first clip. So a big chunk of my games this video are in the Su-33. Even before the recent BR changes, it was one of my favourites, and now it's even better. At the start of this clip here, you'll notice I fire a relatively long range ER. I'm pretty much always doing this early game. I'll climb high, fire at someone high altitude, and then switch back to TWS to put it in IOG so as not to give them too many warnings. Then I'll defend any launches on me if I have to, before recommitting and trying to find a target to relock it. I'm not really fussed who I'm relocking it to. It doesn't have to be the person I fired at initially, it's just anyone who might be currently committed and vulnerable. In this clip I had the luxury of not having to defend, and when this happens the Su-33 is really in its element. Notice I'm using the missile camera to follow that ER in. One quirk of the Su-33 is you don't get the indication on your radar of what the missile is doing, so using the missile camera will let you know if it's tracking, if it's been defeated, and whether you need to fire another. And now I can start capitalizing on the position I have. There is one contrail off in the distance, but I'm not too worried about that right now. For the moment I'm going to try and make use of the top down position I have. Even in a slight up tier like this is technically a 13.7 game, you still don't find that many people contesting the altitude. A lot of F-14s in the early game, but as long as you play smart and don't let yourself get taken out by a Foucault, which can be quite dangerous, they often tend to dive away or die in the early game. So now I can just select my targets. Notice how I'm consistently sort of offsetting myself from like where I see the bulk of their team. As I'm guiding in my ER to that MiG-29, I'm making sure I'm keeping them roughly on the gimbal limit just so I don't push in over the top of their team. Obviously the weakness you have in the Su-33 is if you're using the ERs you're locked into engaging one target at a time, so you don't want to overwhelm yourself with targets below you. Get to take advantage of the R-27 relocks here, so I initially fired at that Hornet but I see he's turning away, so he's already moving into a notch and he was going into a merge with my teammate, so I'm going to switch the ER to the MiGan to make best use of the missile because that MiGan was pushing in closer. As that happens, we get a Fox 3 on my right, so I'm just going to notch that. I think about taking out the Hornet first because he's closer, but he dies, so I'm going to move to engage the guy that just fired at me shortly before this. Now, if your team collapses and you get full pushed by someone with Fox 3s, then you're probably going to have a bad time. That just is what it is. But when you can, always try to position near your team, of course. The Su-33 is kind of a support sniper type plane, I guess. I was able to engage the Phantom after defending because they're not solely focused on me, they're trying to engage multiple targets, so that allows me the window to take them out after I defend the Fox 3. So in this next game I missed out the early game, actually started recording late. I basically just took out someone who just flew straight into my ER, and now I'm taking out a second guy here who again isn't really reacting. There's a lot of people like this in Air RB, you know, there's no like tactics here, you just fire at people and sometimes they just don't defend. Now, I have consciously positioned myself while I'm guiding these ERs. So if you see on the minimap and as I pan my camera around, there is a couple of teammates below me. So as I'm making these top-down attacks now, I want to try and make sure that I have got teammates below me who can cover me and also draw attention. There's a Gripen below unspotted. Look for the missile diamonds, look for the flare trails. That's going to be your clue of where people are. He is going to multipath the ER. Now, going into a merge with a Gripen is going to be a very bad idea in an Su-33. So after he multipaths, I'm going to send the R-73 but that does connect. But even if it didn't, I'm intentionally making sure I keep my speed and fly in the opposite direction because I do not want to get close to a Gripen. I am going to pause it right after though, because in doing so another Gripen has snuck up on my left as I've lost a bit of situational awareness. Now, played correctly, the Gripen should be able to multipath my ER from this altitude, or more easily break my lock by turning off to their right, my left, way past my gimbal limit. Then they could probably push or emerge if I survive their Fox 3, and I'm cooked anyway. From my perspective, this is a sort of all-in scenario. I'm here because of positioning mistakes leading up to this moment. Not only do I require the Gripen to make a mistake, I also have to push the limit to take them out. So at the moment I've paused it, I'm pulling in for the launch. After firing, I'll be keeping the offset, pre-notching essentially, anticipating a Fox 3 coming my way. Then I'm going to push my notch as late as I possibly can to give my ER the best chance of holding guidance. I'll play it through and then we're going to jump to sensor view to have a look at that notch as well. I'll play this through slowly, and the first thing to note is ERs will hold their guidance pretty well even on track memory, even if the target is beyond your gimbal limit. Now, should they be able to do this? I don't know, but in game they do. What I actually want to look at is this notch, and I'll pause it just after the last point the missile sees me. So up until this point there was a bit of chaff rejection, but it reconnected a couple of times between the chaff pops, thus updating the IOG. I watched this one through a few times, and after this freeze frame the missile never truly tracks me again. For now we can see an angle gating the chaff. As always, don't ask me the science behind this. I don't know it, nor do I overly care. I just know how it functions in the context of gameplay, and that is once the missile is rejecting the chaff, it's on IOG. As always, sensor view is misleading, it doesn't update straight away and it says it's still on track, but don't be fooled here. So now take note of my trajectory and the speed. This is what the missile's current IOG is going to be based on. So to live, I need to move out of its path whilst also not allowing myself to move outside the notch angle because it will reconnect and update. After I play through, you'll see my air brake come out and I fully invert to pitch down. It's not much, but it doesn't need to be much. Just enough to escape the proxy fuse range. Notching close range like this requires you to operate purely on feel. You will not have the luxury of your RWR here. I am currently working on a full updated close range notching guide based on situations like this. Maybe not quite as close cut, but the general ideas behind it. As a little teaser, there is one more aspect of how Fox 3s work that helped me here if you can get the timing right. All will be revealed in the notching video, but if you think you know what it is, have a go in the comments. Next game, once again, I started recording late. I'm basically trying to take out an F-14 with my ER when my RWR goes off. You see me defend this missile quite aggressively because it's already right in the middle of my RWR. Yes, I don't run 100% sensitivity, so I do lose a little range, but Fox 3s do not usually show up this late even running 60%, which is my current setting. And that leads me to highlight a danger you may not be fully aware of, and that is the Foucault and even the Phoenix and when they ping your RWR. Before I jump to the sensor view, you'll just see me defend the missile and then take advantage of the ER relock capability. This is a classic early game for me. Fire the ER, unlock and defend, recommit and relock for the kill. It does also help when they fly gun barrel straight, completely ignoring their RWR. Now jumping back to sensor view for the Phoenix that I defeated earlier, it starts in IOG and begins tracking me at about 16 kilometers. Notice how my RWR is completely silent. This isn't because of a blind spot. It's not until it's 10 to 11 kilometers away that it triggers my RWR. At this altitude, if it was a Foucault, I'm honestly already dead at this point. As it's a Phoenix, I have enough time to defeat it just about. With the Foucault especially, by the time it shows up in your RWR, it may well already be too late, so you need to preempt these as best you can. For reference, an AMRAAM triggers my RWR at over 18 kilometers away. And now for the rest of that game, I'm back in that usual sniping position in the Su-33, so I'm kind of working down in altitude looking for the people who are still relatively high, like this guy I've fired on here. He's diving and going cold. I don't want to be bound to hold on to that ER, so I send the ET. Now I take ETs sometimes because it allows me to let go of ERs to focus on someone who pops up a bit closer, but the problem is they're just easily decoyed from range, even by them launching a missile that can sometimes flare it off for them, which is a bit of a pain. Either way, I let go of the ER lock, so I want to take out that F-15 who's a bit closer, more of a threat. I fire the F-14 ahead and he's going to get killed, but notice the missile diamond coming out of the clouds. I knew there's someone in there, so I fish around with the HMD and I managed to make use of an ER there. The Su-33's got no hope defending that because I managed to relock it so late because it was already in the air. So every time someone you fire out of an ER dies, always be looking at the next available target. Try and make use of those missiles, get value out of them, because especially if they're already in the air, when you relock it on someone, they might not have even known one was in the air and it's already on top of them. I managed to get another relock here on this Hornet. He does turn cold though. If he kept going forward, he might have eaten that, but he goes cold and, you know, the missile just kind of runs out of energy. It is what it is. Either way, I can fire another one now, another Hornet. I'm constantly thinking about diving and getting to the deck. I'm basically preempting them paying attention to me. Once I see they're not firing at me, I'm happy to keep my altitude a bit, but always be ready to dive to the deck if you need to, if you suddenly come under a lot of pressure, because the benefit of being at multipath sometimes in a plane like this is you can go head on, hold the ER lock and not worry too much about the missiles coming for you. Last clip in the Su-33 for today, I want to do an example of a BVER engagement with an ER versus an AMRAAM. I spot the central contrail and this is a prime target for an ER, so I go through the usual motions. Fire, switch to TWS straight away to break the RWR warnings and let it coast on IOG. I'll do one quick relock as it's flying through the air just to update it and make sure it's on course. Then finally I switch and hold the hard lock as I see the contrail divert slightly. Now I would have unlocked one more time after updating the IOG to try and trick my target and lock it even later, but I'm going to get an RWR warning pop up from a Fox 3 that's been fired at me from elsewhere. Now this is where your judgment's going to come into it. I'm confident I can hold my lock and abuse track memory a little bit here. So instead of notching left, which is the quickest path to defeat this Fox 3, I aggressively pitch down to notch it, allowing me to keep my radar lock just enough whilst forcing the Fox 3 to turn and bleed energy before I notch it and collect the kill. When dealing with range, try to learn to use your energy and not just your notching. Next I just have a short clip in the F-15. The video is pretty much entirely flankers, but I did have this one good Datalink clip for you, and you know I love these. So I've explained the mechanics of holding your lock to get the benefits of Datalink against notching targets in top-down attacks. That can be either a TWS soft lock or a hard lock, both will work. But if you have a missile that lofts a fair amount, like an AMRAAM, you can still get these benefits despite actually being below your target, like in this clip here. So in this clip I switched to a hard lock because my TWS wasn't picking him up because he's already in a relative notch sort of. So I'm going to fire the AMRAAM with a hard lock and hold the lock, and you see the ring around the target you see is getting Datalink updates here. And briefly he leaves the notch at the end, the missile finds him again and it takes him out. So let's have a look at that one in sensor view. As I fire, we're already within terminal range for the missile, but it still sticks on inertial guidance and Datalink rather than track. Because it's lofted above the target, it's taking the Datalink updates from my radar, which due to the slight offset is outside of the notch window as opposed to the missile's radar, which currently is in the notch window. You can see the grey IOG cone getting updated and remaining centered on the target by the Datalink. The missile picks up guidance about 2 kilometers out, but honestly my target is flying so straight there's a reasonable chance a pure Datalink kill would have been possible. Right, let's get back to the flanker spam. This time in Air RB with the 27SM. Once again starting with an early game ER shot. I pitch up a bit as I fire and break the lock, just to loft it slightly and to also of course get rid of the RWR warnings from my target. Then I'm going to place them on the gimbal limit of my TWS. I'm expecting at least someone to have fired a Fox 3 at me, so I want to extend the time it will take to reach me. Now I showed you earlier that a normal Fox 3 triggers my RWR somewhere around 18 kilometers. So if I pause it at the point at which my RWR gets pinged, we know at this point the AMRAAM is 18 kilometers away from me, or thereabouts. Now my ER looking at my TWS is about a grid away on the scope. It's set to 50 kilometers and there's 4 grids, so we can estimate it's about 12.5 kilometers away. My target is also flying head on rather than cranking, and the ER is faster than an AMRAAM anyway, so there's really no risk here for me to just relock late and hold it all the way in for the severe before a comfortable defense. For For the rest of the video I want to do some 4v4 and 2v2 tournament gameplay. I try to plug tournaments as much as I can. They run weekly and they're so much more fun than AirRB in my opinion. In particular the 2v2 format that I also mentioned in my F2 video is a lot of fun. The 27SM is also in that lineup, so that's what I've been using recently. I'm flying with Hotdog in this match and my first job is climbing and getting some early spotting with my TWS so we know roughly where they are. I spend a bit of time thinking about firing an R-27 or ER, but they don't appear to be immediately pushing us, so I'm happy to save my resources and waste theirs at this point. So I'm just going to notch to the right, playing it safe above my teammate. I'm expecting at least one of them to pop up out of the mountain I've squad pinged. You probably can't see it with the video compression, but sure enough I make out the dot against the background, followed by confirmation on my RWR. So I flick around with my HMD and double launch a 77 and ER before defending. Now the other flanker has done the same, but because I'm firing more or less from a notch and he's basically head on, I know my ER will be faster to target after I defeat the 77 and recommit. Now we've got a 2v1, I just need to play smart. The F-16 is going to push me from below. I make sure this missile isn't tracking me before I get the launch. It is important I try and get this launch before I notch the second missile, just to make sure they can't push me for free and Hotdog can get in and help. And now because they're having to dealing with two people at the same time, while focusing on defending the missile from Hotdog from behind, I can just slot in on their tail. And, you know, after a bit of time, I can just line it up and eventually I can get an R-73 through that they can't defend. Last clip with commentary for today will be a fun 4v4 round against Covert, and the early game is uneventful with some skirmishing and positioning, so I'll briefly go off on a tangent which I wanted to mention in this video, and that is the subject of cherry picking clips. I wanted to bring it up because I think it's an important topic to consider when you're watching YouTube content, namely tutorial focused content. The reality is people aren't going to watch if you just show loads of bad AirRB games. I occasionally do, but only if I think there was an interesting scenario to break down. You know, maybe I died in a way that I think is like a teachable moment for myself and for others. The important thing to remember is an average of 2 kills per game puts you in like the top 1% of players for AirRB. People love to claim and show that they get 4 kills per game to flex, but the stats don't lie. Personally, I try to maintain a standard of if I can't perform well in an airframe, I don't make a video, because what I do is guide and tutorial focused. I want to make sure the information I give you is honest and accurate as best I can to help you do well when you play it. So back to the game on screen, both teams have gone for a different strategy here. So Covert, they've gone to take the C point, which has moved to the D point on their side of the map. We were happy to let them do that. We're just going to push around in the coast, use the terrain to sort of mask, and basically this is going to culminate in a fight between their home cap and the D point. Obviously we need to contest the home cap so we don't just lose on points, and they're going to try and push us from taking it. So they're using the valleys just on my right to push around, so I'm just being conscious not to get too close to that. If I get too far ahead of my brawlers below me, they're going to get underneath me and it's not going to end well. You can see, you know, RWR pings for missiles. I also saw a brief M29 warning. That means flankers fired an ER. So it's important right now that I'm just sort of in preservation mode. I'm making sure that I don't die early, because if someone dies early in 4v4, it usually means you lose the round, because going 4v3 it is never nice. And at this point I actually found myself in the clear with a bit of a different angle and a nice flank on them. I spotted someone in the back line, so I locked them up and sent an R-27ER that way. Now I probably should have double tapped as they go to multipath, or maybe fire an ER, because I only pick up a crit, and if I double tapped I might have been able to get the kill there. I do fire eventually after I see the crit, and then I've just got to notch. He's going to terrain mask, so I'm just going to extend back towards my team whilst he's repositioning, so I've got that bit of terrain cover now. So I'm going to have a look at these two over here. I get the missile on free, I move into the notch. Not worried about King obviously, because you can see that he is currently severed and going down. And now you're going to see the power of the ER in play again. I'm going to fire it at free with the intention to secure the kill, but as he gets taken out I can quickly switch the lock to the J10, and then I can abuse track memory like I mentioned earlier as I notch the R-77 from Dom Richard, and I can still get that ER through. If we're being real, I don't think that should hit. Maybe if you get lucky on IOG, but the fact that still seems to maintain guidance in that situation, maybe doesn't seem totally fair to me. Either way, if it's there, I'm going to abuse it, and then I get the R-73. I missed the guns though, but that cleans up Don, and that's the end of that game. Always happy to play the covert TSS teams. I'm in their squadron after all, but yeah, it's always a fun competitive match every time with plenty of action. And that is it for Volume 1 of this series. As I mentioned in my intro, my plan is to put one of these together whenever I have a backlog of footage and no clear videos to make. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm still of course trying to give you the detailed breakdowns and sensor view and stuff like that. After all, I consider myself primarily a tutorial style content creator, and if there is any entertainment value in it, then that's a bonus in my opinion. As I upload this, we're in the lead up to the first qualifier for air superiority, so naturally I'm going to be quite busy, so I can't provide timelines for my next uploads, but make sure you check out the official streams and keep an eye out for my team, which is Ouroboros, as well as the other mythical teams Ignis Avis, Raiju and Fenrir. Hopefully we can qualify, but I'm expecting it to be tough. Either way, I'll see you all next time.